So when you talk to an ex-cult member, you tend to hear people say, well, you hear a lot of people say, I had good memories, it wasn't all that bad. I made really good friends. Whatever, their experience overall was pretty positive until they found out it was all a lie and their worldview was just completely shattered. And someone one time asked me that in an interview, something similar. They were like, asking if I had any of those types of memories. And I told them honestly, I was like, I have no warm fuzzies of the organization or my time in the organization. I personally felt like it didn't add anything to my life. It didn't add any value or purpose. I didn't gain purpose personally from being a Jehovah's Witness. It felt like an obligation. I've said that before. People have heard me say that. It felt like an obligation. It felt like another job I had to do. Like, I have school, I have work. I'm exhausted from work, and now I gotta rush home after work and put on a skirt and, go to the Kingdom Hall. It just felt like another task to check off. So, it's not like I'm not gonna have any of those memories of like, oh man, I miss the gang. Me and my buddy, we used to go knocking, because people have stories like that. Former Jehovah's Witnesses will say, like, me and my best friend used to go preaching, knocking on doors, and I remember I have such good times with them or whatever. Zero sentimental attachment. I pulled an Irish exit, and in other words, I could easily walk away and not miss it. And yet, despite all that, there is a very strong chance that I would still be a Jehovah's Witness to this day if, I'm gonna add a giant, big, fat qualifier here, if they didn't have a chronic systemic CSA problem. Let me just say that. If they were taking care of proper legal protocols, okay? This is the qualifier. Let's say they followed proper legal protocols, contacted the authorities, and they didn't have a CSA problem. Because that's why I officially disassociated, revoked my membership formally from the organization, was because of when I found out the CSA cases. Put all that aside, all right? Giant qualifier. If that wasn't a problem, I would still be a Jehovah's Witness today. Probably. If they had programs for teenagers. I actually talked about this last year, but I'm going to redo a video now and just elaborate on it because I got a batch of new subscribers. Thank you for subbing. Just in case you didn't see it, I'm going to go ahead and elaborate as to why this is the case. When I was 14, I don't know, something clicked. I got really into fitness. Jogging every day. I was obsessed with ballet. I've talked about that on this channel ad nauseum too. I danced for many years. I just wanted to move my body and be active. I don't know, I just got really into fitness, but where I grew up in the South, like there was zero interest as a Jehovah's Witness. There was zero interest in this kind of thing in my peer group. The only thing that really came close was like guys my age in local congregations and in my congregation that would, that were into football. I mean, it was, Dallas, Texas. So, football's huge. So, you had teenage boys tossing a football around. That was the closest thing I saw in my area. And I know for a fact that in other countries and maybe different regions of the US, this was not a problem. There was still zero official programs by the organization that were specifically for teenagers, like camps, some kind of official organized activity for teenagers to blow off some steam, meet other teenagers in the area, and encourage some other, sort of stimulating activity, whether that was sports or the arts or music. Here's the deal. I know that somebody out there watching this is going to be like, oh God, I was raised Baptist. I had to go to Jesus camp or some kind of, whatever. You were raised religious by your parents and you had to go to some sort of church camp and you hated it and be like, oh God, it sucked. And I'm not dismissing your experience. Maybe it did suck, but I've also heard things from teenagers over the years and people who are now, grown-ass adults saying that kind of rolled my eyes. It was church camp, but we did some fun stuff. My argument is not so much that if we had these things as Jehovah's Witnesses, official programs or camps for teenagers, my argument is not so much that I would have loved every second of being a Jehovah's Witness, that I would agree with everything wholesale. That's just not realistic. You got people sitting in churches right now who don't fully buy in. You got PMOs in other churches. They're there for the same reasons that a lot of Jehovah's Witnesses are trapped in the organization. They have their family there or whatever. They don't have a shunning policy. Let me be clear about that. But there's people in churches right now that don't fully buy into every little thing they're being told or taught or part of, whatever their organization is. But it's more so It's not that I would have believed all the things and would have been happy all the time. It's that I would have felt like I didn't want for anything. I would feel like I had everything in one place. I wouldn't have felt so deprived as a Jehovah's Witness teenager, like other kids are having fun out in the world. I wouldn't have felt like I needed anything in the outside world because I would have felt like all my needs were being met within the organization. And this is I feel, is a crucial, all right, Jehovah's Witnesses, this is a crucial juncture. You gotta appeal to this demographic because that's the demographic. It's going secretly inside going, God, this sucks. I can't wait till I turn 18, man. Or how the hell am I gonna get out of this? I don't believe, but I don't wanna leave and be shunned. How the hell am I gonna get out of this and not lose my family? Jehovah's Witnesses do a huge disservice to themselves by not having teen programs. 2/3, all right? 2/3. Over 67%, according to the Pew Research Foundation, leave the Jehovah's Witnesses. Because it sucks, man. And here's the deal. Doctrine and teachings aside, like, oh, it's a cult, it doesn't make any sense, it's far-fetched and ridiculous. That aside, it sucks. Meeting service. No hobbies, no career. And for anyone, who thinks this is just a big rant, I am ranting. But the crazy part is I'm ranting in favor of Jehovah's Witnesses. That if you had just changed this one thing, you might have had me. Dude, paradise on earth? Great. Sounds a little far-fetched, but hey, looking forward to that. Meanwhile, while I'm waiting for paradise, on Saturdays, me and the other athletic Jehovah's Witness girls can get together. We have track team on Saturdays. We all huddle and pray and love Jehovah, and we talk about Jehovah and paradise, and then we have a track meet. And the boys can go have their Jehovah's Witness football team. Or you're more artsy. You play in a band. Cool. We got the Jehovah's Witness dance class, art class, painting, you get the drift. So that was happening in little pockets, but if you're watching this, you've played music or you did anything creative, you know that it was not, Watchtower approved. It wasn't through the Watchtower approved filter or lens. You had to be careful. All right, so this is my proposal. Keep it all contained under the Jehovah's Witness umbrella. Put the blue stamp, JW.org stamp on it, but give these kids something that they can feel proud of. To feel like their talents are being utilized. Something to make them feel good about themselves. And maybe, just maybe, they might not feel the need to go into the outside world to look for those things. They wouldn't feel deprived or, feel like they got to leave altogether. I quite possibly could have woken up anyway and just been like, this is BS, rolling my eyes or whatever. That's totally a possibility that I would have woken up anyway. But, again, without CSA and shunning, I might have also just said, whatever, I have community. I have some really great memories, doing fun stuff, sprinkled with church stuff. What can I say? It adds value to my life. I have more reasons to stay than to leave. We weren't suffocated by church surveillance. We did normal teenage things and went out on dates with our friends, went to the football game, went to the concert, and somehow, amidst all this, right, we managed to save sex until marriage because we actually internalized these values, not because the elders were policing our every move, waiting, to punish us because he wants to cop a feel. You guys, this isn't some pipe dream. This is not some unattainable fantasy scenario. This is quite possible. This is happening in churches right now. And sure, shitty things happen in churches too, but there are young Christians, all right, whether you want to hear this or not. And look, I'm not Christian, all right? There are young Christians in churches right now who are in happy, stable marriages, raising well-adjusted children. Will their children grow up and still want to be in the church, or maybe they grow up to be gay, or they're atheist, or something else is going on in their brains? Possibly. There's always that possibility that their kids will grow up and also leave. But there are healthy, happy, well-adjusted people coming out of churches. because they got to experience what I've been talking about this whole time. They got to experience these normal developmental milestones that a lot of Jehovah's Witnesses never got to experience. They got to live a normal, just generally broad stroke speaking, normal, nobody has a perfect life, but normal teenage experience without excessive moral constraints. And it's why the organization has the problems that it has. Okay, so what are, as a teenager, you think, well, what are my values? Do I believe this? My parents have been dragging me to church. Secretly, no, I don't believe. I can't wait to leave. Or maybe, yes, I do adopt these values. I have internalized them. And you know what? I like it here. I'm a true believer. I feel supported. I've always felt supported. This is where I'm going to lay down my roots for my future. This is where I want to raise a family. This is what I want my future to be. And yes, you could argue that 19 years old, that's too young. You're still a baby. But what does that say? Because Jehovah's Witnesses, we're true Christians. Yeah, and you got a high divorce rate. People are miserable. The young people are miserable. And take a page from these other churches where I'm seeing, even in my town, their life doesn't look like it totally sucks. Maybe if we created our own programs that will keep our youth enthusiastic about staying Jehovah's Witnesses and not being bored out of their goddamn minds, maybe 2/3 wouldn't be leaving, including me. Maybe I still would have left. Maybe it's very possible I still would have left. I'm not really religious. The possibility is there too that I could have looked back and said, but at least it wasn't terrible. It didn't ruin my family relationships or sabotage my future in some way. But maybe by doing this, they would have made it harder for me to leave for the right reasons. See you next time.